Hello everyone, welcome back to Plant Versus. In today's video, I'll be talking about one of the most spectacular and dazzling flowering plants you can grow in a garden, the Bougainvillea. This plant commands attention immediately and easily becomes the focal point of any garden with its mesmerizing beauty. Even though it does not have any smell, but this is not a plant that blooms quietly. It explodes with color, and during peak flowering, the blooms become so dense that sometimes the leaves are even hardly visible underneath. Now, what I personally find the most fascinating thing about Bougainvillea is that it is just so obedient and flexible. Yes, you heard that right. It is obedient. It obeys your commands very well, and you can train it in almost any way you want. It can climb, it can crawl, it can cascade, it can wrap around gates and pergolas, it can spill dramatically from terraces and balconies, it can grow beautifully in pots as well. And guess what? You can even turn it into a tree. Very few flowering plants are this adaptable structurally, and at the same time, it is also very forgiving of your mistakes. Even after pruning mistakes or stress, it usually recovers strongly once the conditions improve. Now in today's video, we are going to cover why Bougainvillea is one of the greatest statement plants ever, its growth habit and training methods, the psychology behind its flowering, the biggest mistake people make with this plant, sunlight requirements, proper soil mix and drainage, fertilizers for massive blooming, pruning and maintenance, and the flowering behavior of Bougainvillea. So with that being said, let's begin. Personally, I believe some plants are more than just plants. Some plants become our expressions. They become statement plants. Statement plants are those plants through which you express yourself in the garden. For example, people use jewelry or fashion to express themselves visually or make a statement about themselves. But in gardening context, we use plants as a medium to express ourselves. And if you want to make really bold, loud, flamboyant, and extravagant statements, then definitely go for Bougainvillea. Let it speak for you in the garden and watch how it awes people. Because when people see a mature bougainvillea covered in a cascade of powerful display of explosive flowers, they instantly get what you are trying to say visually. And what makes this even more fascinating is that you can also multigraft it numerous colorful varieties onto one single plant. Imagine one plant blooming in pink, purple, orange, white, red, and magenta all at the same time. One single plant can completely dazzle the eyes of the viewers. And during peak flowering, the blooms becomes very dense. This is the kind of visual impact bougainvilleas can create. Now, beyond its flowers, what makes bougainvillea truly special is its adaptability. This plant can take almost any shape, any form, depending on how you train it. It can climb vertically over walls, crawl horizontally, spill dramatically from terraces and balconies, wrap around arches and gates, or become sculptural when pruned properly. And yes, you can even train bougainvillea into a proper tree. This is one of the most fascinating things about this plant. Whether you grow it in a garden, in ground, or inside pots, it has the ability to completely transform the visual atmosphere of a space. Interestingly, Bougainvillea also performs beautifully in containers. In fact, slightly root-bound plants often flower more heavily because the plant redirects more energy into blooming instead of excessive vegetative growth. This is why oversized pots sometimes produce too much leafy growth and very few flowers. A medium-sized pot with excellent drainage usually works much better. Now, before discussing care, it is very important to understand how bougainvillea actually behaves. Once you understand this plant psychologically, growing it becomes much easier. Bougainvillea flowers heavily when you induce stress. This is extremely important to understand. Unlike many plants that blooms more when pampered constantly, bougainvillea behaves differently. If you keep this plant too comfortable all the time, it will focus on vegetative growth, meaning more leaves and branches only. But when this plant senses slightly harsh conditions, especially dryness and strong sunlight, it redirects its energy into flowering. This is why mature bougainvilleas growing in dry, sunny areas often bloom more heavily than heavily pampered plants. And this is one of the biggest secrets behind massive blooming. Bougainvillea is also one of those rare plants that surprisingly thrives when you care less. Now, this brings us to the biggest mistake people make with bougainvillea: overwatering. Many people unknowingly reduce flowering by trying to care for the plant too much. If the soil remains constantly wet, bougainvillea usually becomes very leafy, produces very few flowers. The plant becomes green but not colorful. Now, of course, this does not mean neglecting watering completely. Young plants still need regular watering when establishing roots, but once mature, bougainvillea prefers cycles where the soil dries slightly before watering. Controlled stress is the key. That stress response is what triggers its explosive blooming behavior. Sunlight is another extremely important factor here. Bougainvillea absolutely love strong sunlight, and that to direct sunlight. And insufficient sunlight is one of the most common reasons why people fail to get heavy flowering. For best results, this plant needs at least 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight daily. The more sunlight it receives, the heavier and brighter the flowering usually becomes. Plants that are kept in shade often produce a lot of leaves but very few blooms. This plant particularly enjoys heat, brightness, and intense direct sunlight. Now let's talk about the soil, because drainage is extremely important for bougainvillea. This plant absolutely hates heavy waterlogged soil. The roots need oxygen and airflow. If the soil remains compact and wet for too long, flowering reduces significantly. A very effective soil mix for bougainvillea can be 40% garden soil, 30% sand or perlite, 20% coco 10% compost. The high percentage of sand improves drainage and prevents excessive water retention. Coco helps maintain slight moisture while still keeping the soil airy, and compost provides slow release nutrients for steady healthy growth. Now, fertilizers also play a very major role in flowering. But understanding fertilizer chemistry is very important with bougainvillea. You may have seen fertilizers labeled as NPK. NPK stands for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Nitrogen mainly promotes leafy vegetative growth. Phosphorus supports root development and flowering. And potassium improves flower quality, color intensity, stress tolerance, and overall plant strength. Now, here is where many people make mistakes. If you use fertilizers with very high in nitrogen, the plant will mostly focus on producing vegetative growth instead of flowers. This is why some bougainvilleas become huge and green but barely bloom. For heavy flowering, bougainvillea performs much better with fertilizers lower in nitrogen and slightly higher in phosphorus and potassium. You can use flowering fertilizers that have a composition of NPK 5-10-10 or NPK 10-20-20 during active blooming season. You can also apply them once every 20 to 30 days during active growth. Organic compost also works pretty well for maintaining healthy soil biology, steady nutrition. An occasional magnesium supplementation through Epsom salt can also improve chlorophyll production and foliage quality. But remember, fertilizers alone can never compensate for poor sunlight and excessive watering. Sunlight and controlled stress are still the real foundation behind very heavy bougainvillea flowering. Now, pruning is another important part of bougainvillea care. Bougainvillea flowers mostly on newer growth. That means pruning actually encourages future flowering. And major flowering cycles, light trimming stimulates branching, and more branches mean more flowering points. Without pruning, the plant becomes too long, uneven, and structurally messy over time. Pruning also helps maintain shape. If you are training the plant over arches, pergolas, walls, or fences, because bougainvilleas respond extremely well to shaping, it almost obeys the structure you want it to follow. In warm tropical and subtropical climates, Bougainvillea can flower multiple times throughout the year, but flowering usually becomes especially intense during hot, sunny weather combined with slightly dry conditions. When Bougainvillea enters peak bloom, it rarely disappoints you visually. So overall, Bougainvillea is far more than just a flowering plant. It's a visual experience, a statement, a living structure of color, movement, and energy. It allows you to express yourself through gardening in an incredibly dramatic way. And once you truly understand this plant, especially its love for sunlight, controlled stress, and excellent drainage, it becomes one of the most rewarding flowering plants you can ever grow. Well, that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you found this video informative and learned something useful today, please hit that subscribe button and don't forget to like and share this video. Your support truly motivates me to continue creating more such detailed and research based plant videos like this. And let me know in the comments which bougainvillea variety or color is your favorite. I'll see you in the next garden video. Thank you.